SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Okay, and we're live from ICE 2025 Barcelona. It's day 2, and we're joined by Marina Selmi, Sales Manager for LATAM at Sportingtech. And before we begin, just a shout out to our sponsors, Optimove. Marina and I are going to have a deep discussion and a deep dissect of what's going on in Brazil. And Marina, let's go straight into it. The market launched in January. And my first question would be, why has it been so frantic?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. I know Brazil is the country that grows the most when it comes to iGaming. So, I mean, especially people that have been in this industry in Brazil and working in iGaming for the last few years, the market is growing so much and so fast, and there's so much potential on it. So, I mean, we've been hearing, for example, about the regulation for a few years now, and with a bunch of foreign companies coming to Brazil, local companies making a lot of money and growing so much, and the regulation just hitting, everything is just heated right now. So much going on.
So tell me, for Sportingtech, what's kind of the technology play for Brazil, which is a market that, the regulatory kind of foundation has been set, but do you know kind of the competitive elements and what are the interplays of the market?
So Sportingtech focused in Brazil since the early ages. We were one of the first platforms to actually use Brazil as its main market and arrive in Brazil and have a product built for the Brazilian, which is something that at the time, and as a Brazilian, we would see a lot of platforms, but they didn't really have a technology focused for Brazil. It was mostly for Europeans, and they would just try to implement in Brazil. So Sportingtech for Brazil is our main market, so it grows so much. So we were prepared and lucky enough to be one of the first ones there. And right now we just see so much happening and so many players coming, and it's growing so much.
So let's focus on Brazil. I mean, how does it differ to other Latin American markets, and why is it such a different challenge compared to any other market that we've seen in sports betting?
I think, the first main key point here is I think a lot of outsiders treat Latin America as it was like a whole thing.
Sure.
When in reality, you have to treat each market so individually. It's like its own universe for each one of them. And of course, if you compare all Latin American countries, just Brazil by itself is so different than all the other ones. First of all, we're speaking Portuguese here, not Spanish. And I mean, when it comes down to Brazil, I think just the consumer behavior, the way things happen in Brazil, it's very specific, it's very informal. So, I mean, it's down to so many different aspects why Brazil is so different than the rest of it. But again, you have to treat each of them so individual to each other.
And a market that has launched 90 brands have come out to play in Brazil. Such kind of high competition at this early stage. What do you think the competitive dynamics are going to be for these guys? I mean, can they really engage with that? Can they really transfer that competition to scale? Can they take market share that quickly?
Yeah, so I think the trend that we're seeing right now in the market in Brazil is the market is consolidating. So it's almost like a funnel. So there were so many brands, and now with the whole regulation coming, like only the big guys are here, or the ethical guys are here. So with that comes the need to be able to be different than your competitor, be able to personalize yourself and just be unique. And what's the word for it? Stand out.
Yes, yeah.
Stand out in the market. So you can definitely level up. Of course, if you're just starting now as an operator, it's hard because you're definitely competing with some guys that have been around for a very long time. But again, if you're able to stand out, there's always that chance.
And tell me more about providing a true localized offer. How does Sportingtech view that? And also yourself, from your personal experience, I mean, what do you think the customer wants in Brazil, and what are they getting at the moment?
So in Brazil, iGaming, back in the days it was such a taboo, and nowadays it's something so common, and we see that like culturally in Brazil. When you go to airports or like even in songs right now, you hear people talking about bets. So the market grew so much from the last few years to now, and we still have a lot of products that are now really designed to the Brazilian user. So it's products, again, that were built for Europeans or Americans. And I mean, players notice that. And it's just not even the product itself, it's everything. Everything has to be localized. It's having a team to take care of your customers, that they're speaking Portuguese, they're not foreigners, they're in the same time zone. The product is built for Brazilians. So I guess it's everything.
Do you think that any kind of Western or European learnings can be transferred to a Brazilian audience?
Yeah.
Or are they just too niche, too specific?
I think every country, they will always prioritize making business with their own. I think it's not just down to Brazilian.
Yeah.
But I think they definitely can. It's just a matter of studying a lot, researching a lot about Brazil or the country you're going, and seeing how it works, things there, and giving enough autonomy to the people that are going to be working there. And these people either being from there, because then they think as the consumers are thinking, or they know how to speak the language, at least. Like, that's a minimum. But understanding well the market. If you're a foreign company coming to Brazil and wanting to do the way you do in your country, it's not going to work. And it's not even just for iGaming. I think any industry.
Sure.
LeanOn is an iGaming SaaS provider that helps operators launch their businesses in minutes within an easy-to-use environment. During ICE Barcelona, LeanOn will showcase the auction of 3 websites starting from €499 and the exclusive, fully operating casino website for only €5,000. Make sure to visit LeanOn at their stand during ICE Barcelona to find out more.
And indeed, and tell me about Sportingtech itself, and what are kind of the localized aspects of Sportingtech for that Brazil market and for LATAM as a region too?
Yeah, so as I was saying more in the beginning, Sportingtech was very pioneer, and they arrived in Brazil kind of very early in the beginning and when iGaming was growing. And the fact that we have a product that we actually sit down and studied and know how the Brazilian consumer behaves, and it's a product built for it. We not just brought a product from outside and plugged it in. I think that's their most advantage thing here. We have a lot of competitors nowadays in the market that are basically just have platforms that have plugins from different companies, and they put there, and just the user experience itself is just not that great. Now, Sportingtech was focusing a lot in Brazil. I think everybody was because of the regulation. But now that we're expanding to the rest of Latin America, it's ideally doing the same thing. We're not just going to get a Brazilian product and plug in, for example, in Peru or Chile. It's making sure we're going to change our technology and build a product that is meant for that country that we're going.
Yeah. And then how much of a game changer is Brazil's impact and effect of how the market works out for the rest of Latin America? I mean, how do you kind of see that territory changing in the next 4 or 5 years?
I think it's all very new right now, but I think if you compare, for example, even not to just other Latin American countries, but for example, UK is an example nowadays of a really well-regulated market for iGaming, and Brazil used a lot of that and influenced a lot on the UK to build its regulation. So I think right now we're just starting. I mean, we're still in January, so there's so much to come still, but I think we're in a really good direction. And there's a few countries still in Latin America that are not regulated, and they're definitely seeing all the movements that are happening in Brazil. So I think it's just going to consolidate even more the regulation, and that's going to open door for countries in Latin America that are still not regulated to take that next step.
So focusing on 2025 and Brazil, what are kind of your expectations for the market? Tell us kind of 1 or 2 kind of nuggets of information that you want to put out to the audience in terms of how you think Brazil will play out in 2025.
So what I think it's going to happen, it's like I was talking about the funneling, is the market's going to consolidate. So we had initially like 200 brands applying for regulation. Now we're down to like 60 some. We have 14 companies that actually have a license that are not provisionary, and we have around 55 that are waiting to have it the actual license ready to go. So I think that's going to funnel even more. I think only key players are going to stay in the market, whether it's payments, whether it's KYC platforms. And I think people are just going to have to start spending for other countries.
So, still on Brazil, but does first mover advantage really have any long-term difference on how the market will play out?
Of course. I think strategically speaking, there's two ways to view this. So we have a lot of companies right now that because it's so new, there's so much changes happening that they decided to withdraw or hold for now into getting the license just to see how it's going to play out, what's going to happen, because there's still a lot of changes to come. But for these guys that just came straight, these brands and operators that already went straight with the license, I think there's definitely advantages because they're getting a piece of that market and of these clients that the other guys that decided to wait are losing. So yeah, I think it's good that the first level of guys already have that regulation in place. Either it's provisionary or it's already working. They're getting more market, so it's good for them.
And then finally, what do you think is the fundamental technology challenge of Brazil for the platform provider, for your tech suppliers coming in? I mean, what are they fundamentally getting tested on?
That's a good question because it's so many things to it. I think right now the most important things is making sure your platform has everything that the government expects it to have. So your technology has to have the GLI certifications. You have to have, we're seeing some platforms that are having problems, for example, with their KYC products. So it's just making sure overall that your technology is ready for regulated Brazil.
So sign us off, please. Tell us why Sportingtech are the technology company to watch in Brazil.
I mean, we were one of the first ones to have the GLI license. Like I said in the beginning, we have a product built for the Brazilian user. It's not a lot of plugins or foreign products that are not designed for your Brazilian average customer. So the technology is there. The team is there. We have a whole autonomy in Brazil, an office there. So really good clients. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. So just keep an eye on us.
Well, Marina, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to interview you on All Brazilian Dynamics. Have a great conference.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.